She cried, "Please save my brother." And the millionaire broke down. Before the story begins, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And if you love emotional love stories, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and keep bringing you stories that touch the heart. The afternoon fell with a biting wind over San Francisco, muffling the city's noise with the dull sound of hurried footsteps and distant horns. The sidewalks of the financial district reflected the glowing signs of hospitals and luxury banks. On the edge of one of those sidewalks, kneeling on the cold, damp concrete, was Emma, exhausted, hungry, her fingers trembling as she tried to open a packet of broken crackers. Beside her, Liam, just 5 years old, huddled under a thin, frayed blanket, coughing weakly. His pale face, marked by cold and sleepless nights, was flushed with fever, and so pale it made his blue eyes look even deeper. He struggled to breathe, wheezing sharply with every attempt to inhale. Emma positioned her frail body behind him to shield him from the wind, and held his shoulders with a desperate tenderness. "Sure, it'll pass, okay? Just like last time. Try to breathe slowly with me." She looked up, searching for a sign, a chance, a way out. And that's when her eyes landed on the gleaming building in front of her. Whitmore Health Center, the most sophisticated hospital in the city. Glass facade, wide staircase, metal signs with embossed letters. The symbol of a system that had always seemed out of reach. But at that moment, it was all she had. Without thinking twice, Emma picked Liam up. The boy could no longer keep his eyes open. His little arms hung limp. Her heart raced. She felt the weight of urgency and the real fear of losing him right there in front of everyone. She crossed the street with difficulty, staggering under the boy's weight and the pain in her feet inside her worn-out sneakers. She climbed the hospital steps, stumbling over her own legs. The automatic glass doors didn't open. She had no card, no insurance, no status. 2 uniformed security guards appeared. One was tall, arms crossed, expression neutral. The other was speaking into a radio. Emma didn't ask for permission. She just begged, "Please, he can't breathe. Help us, he's just a child." The older guard replied with the professional tone of someone who says this every day. "Ma'am, this hospital only admits patients by appointment or with approved insurance. Emergencies must go through the public system." Emma collapsed to her knees. "Then call an ambulance. For God's sake, he's going to die." The guard hesitated for a moment, but the protocol was clear. "We don't have a private ambulance available right now. You need to step away." From the entrance, Emma clutched Liam tighter. The boy whimpered softly. His breathing was already shallow, almost non-existent. She screamed, "He's going to die." "And you're saying that calmly? Isn't this a hospital?" More people began to gather at a distance. Some stared, others looked away. An older woman took out her phone and started recording, and that's when the black car appeared. A sleek, dark sedan pulled up in front of the staircase. The rear door opened, and out stepped a tall man with broad shoulders, wearing a navy blue tailored suit, not flashy, but flawless. His dark brown hair, neatly combed, seemed untouched by the wind. His eyes, hidden behind metal-framed sunglasses, scanned the scene with trained detachment. It was Ethan Whitmore, CEO of the hospital, heir to a billion-dollar healthcare empire, and the living symbol of untouchable success. Emma saw him, not as a businessman, not as a public figure, but as her only chance. She rose in a rush, Liam still in her arms. She stumbled to him and stopped right in front of him. "Please, please, save my brother." Her voice came out shaky, strained by effort and desperation. Ethan stopped. His body froze for a moment. The words hit him with unexpected force. He slowly removed his glasses, revealing greenish-gray eyes that immediately focused on the boy. Emma continued, "He's only 5. I'm begging you, let him in. I don't have money or insurance, but I'd do anything." For a second, silence took over everything. The world seemed suspended. Ethan's eyes locked on Liam's face, pale, sweaty, semi-conscious, his arm limp at his side and his mouth open in a fight for air. The guard tried to step in, whispering, "Mr. Whitmore, we're handling it. I can escort her." But Ethan raised his hand without a word. He kept looking at Emma. She wasn't crying. She wasn't kneeling anymore. She was just there, whole and shattered, holding her brother with what little dignity she had left. And in that moment, the power of that gesture outweighed any speech. Ethan swallowed hard and turned his face, speaking firmly, "Take the boy inside, now." "But sir, the protocol." "I said now." 2 paramedics were called immediately. A stretcher appeared like a miracle. Emma gently placed Liam down but stayed by his side as they entered the hospital. The glass doors, once shut to her, now opened automatically with a warm breath of air. As the doors closed behind them, Ethan remained frozen, staring at the empty space where moments before there had been a plea. He didn't know it yet, but what had just happened in that single minute would be the beginning of the end of his own indifference. The hospital's inner corridor felt like a different universe. The air conditioning carried a subtle, perfumed breeze, and the sounds echoing through the halls were orderly, mechanical, monitor beeps, the steps of expensive shoes, voices in calm, measured tones. Emma walked beside the stretcher with her, eyes fixed on Liam. The boy's small body trembled, but he was conscious. His eyes fluttered open and shut as if fighting exhaustion. "You're going to be okay," Emma repeated like a mantra, even though she didn't know if she believed it herself. Around her, doctors, nurses, and technicians moved like clockwork. No one looked directly at her. No one asked her name. Only the boy's medical chart mattered now. And then, when the paramedics disappeared behind the double doors of the pediatric wing, Emma stopped. Her legs shook. A deep fatigue spread through her back, and for the first time since crossing the street, she realized she was completely alone inside a system that was never built for her. She sat in a metal chair in the hallway, pressed her hands against her face, smelling sweat and dust. The silence that followed the rush was almost offensive. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, reality followed its own course. Ethan still stood on the front steps. He hadn't moved. His face remained expressionless, but something inside had trembled. And he hated that feeling. His personal assistant approached, phone in hand. "Mr. Whitmore, your meeting with the cardiology board starts in 12 minutes. Ethan turned his gaze to the side and gave a brief nod. Around him, staff resumed their usual hustle. But the security guards were still there, one of them visibly uncomfortable. "Sir," the older one said, "we need to remove the woman from the restricted area. She stayed after the boy was admitted and, technically, she doesn't have authorization." Ethan tilted his neck slightly, as if waking from a trance. He took a sharp breath and said, without looking the guard in the eyes, "Handle it discreetly. No scene, no crowd. I don't want this in the hallways." "Understood." He entered the hospital's glass lobby with calculated steps. The architecture around him was flawless: light marble floors, ornamental plants, LED panels showing institutional campaigns with images of smiling children and words like access, trust, excellence. Every detail screamed status, distance, exclusivity. Emma, meanwhile, barely had time to breathe before being approached. "Ma'am," the guard said in a neutral tone, "I'm going to ask you to come with us, please." She stood up with difficulty. "My brother, he was taken inside. I need to know how he's doing." The doctors are taking care of him. As soon as there's an update, the care team will reach out. I don't have a phone, she said firmly. I don't have an address. He's all I have. I'm not leaving. The guard hesitated, looked at his colleague, who was already stepping closer to assist. They guided her to the entrance, not violently, but firmly. And that's when the first voice spoke up. Hey, why are you kicking her out? A woman in a gray coat with a backpack had stopped to watch. She just saved her brother, who almost died out here. Another person started recording on their phone. Look at this. This is Whitmore Hospital. Look how they treat someone begging for help. Emma was escorted outside as camera flashes and recordings surrounded her. She tried to cover her face with her sleeve, but there was no escape. One last time, she looked inside. Her eyes searched for Ethan, but he had already vanished into the wide marble hallway. Upstairs, Ethan entered the boardroom with rigid shoulders and a distant gaze. He sat at the head of the table as a screen lit up and reports began to display. One of the directors mentioned his name. The hospital had just hit a record quarterly revenue. The expansion into Los Angeles was in its final phase. A new image campaign called Humanity is Our Legacy would launch in a week, but Ethan heard none of it because he still saw the child's eyes, still heard Emma's voice. Please, save my brother. He moved his fingers beneath the table. The pen between them spun involuntarily. His eyes were fixed on the screen, but his mind was still on that cold sidewalk. The image of the woman being escorted out by two guards. Her gaze, not hateful, but weary. The look of someone who already knew she'd be cast aside again. And, no matter how hard he tried to ignore it, something inside him had cracked. He was used to screams, bargaining, pleas for access, money, favors. But Emma hadn't begged for herself. She only asked someone to see a 5-year-old boy fighting. To breathe. And that was something not even he could ignore. The next morning, San Francisco woke as usual. Cafes filling up thermal cups. Executives hurrying into mirrored buildings downtown. Influencers smiling for cameras on immaculately clean streets. But that Thursday, a different kind of video was circulating on people's phones, spreading like wildfire. Luxury hospital expels woman holding sick child. 5-year-old suffers respiratory crisis and is ignored by security. Ethan Whitmore watches silently, orders mother removed from hospital door. The video showed Emma in despair, kneeling and screaming for help while holding Liam in her arms. The boy coughed and passed out. Then came the footage of two guards dragging her away under the indifferent gaze of the CEO. Social media exploded. Hashtags like #SaveLiam, #EmmaIsNotAlone, and especially #HeartlessWhitmore hit the trending topics in under 4 hours. Celebrities commented, influencers reacted with teary eyes and all-caps captions, and thousands of people shared the clip, saying things like, "This is the America that closes its doors on those who need them most." At Whitmore Health headquarters, the atmosphere was one of controlled panic. The board meeting began in silence, except for the giant screen showing the company's plummeting stock graph in real time. Ethan entered as always. Flawless suit, expressionless face, watch perfectly fastened to his wrist. But even he knew something was now out of his control. "Mr. Whitmore, the situation is slipping out of our hands," said the marketing director. An elegant woman with red hair tied in a bun and a voice carefully measured. "What we're dealing with is a full-blown PR crisis." Ethan sat at the head of the table, arms crossed. "I've seen worse. People forget in 3 days." A younger aide replied, voice shaky, "Not this time, sir. This story is powerful. The child, the emotional appeal, your family name being exposed. It's being called the hospital that throws out the poor," another executive chimed. In, rubbing his temples. Shareholders are demanding an urgent response. Mainstream media's picking it up now. And the boy? Ethan interrupted, almost without realizing he'd asked. The room fell silent. Then the public affairs director responded. He wasn't admitted here. He wasn't accepted into the famed at the Whitmore Health System. The mother took him on her own to St. Mary's in the Mission District. He was admitted through emergency. Ethan slowly looked up. What's his condition? Not much, but we got an unofficial report. The boy is in the pediatric ICU. His respiratory condition worsened during the night. He's been intubated. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the red graphs crashing on the screen. Then tell me, Ethan said, colder than ever. What's the image team suggesting? The marketing woman answered firmly, organize a visit to the public hospital. We advise a formal apology, a donation to the children's unit, and a photo with the child, of course. Humanizes your image, shows that you care. Ethan stared at her for several seconds. Show that I care? He repeated, almost mockingly. It's the most strategic move right now, she insisted. It's that or you become the face of an inhuman elite. And that's how empires fall. He stood up, adjusting his blazer over his shoulders. Walked to the glass window overlooking the hills and overcast sky. His eyes fixed on nothing. But inside, he still saw the boy. The light body in his sister's arms, the breathless gaze. Prepare a formal apology, he said finally. No photo, no hospital, no performance. The team exchanged glances, surprised. But sir, that won't be enough, the crisis manager warned. Ethan turned slowly, then let it not be enough. He left the room without another word. The marble hallway echoed the sound of his expensive shoes. But for the first time, he wasn't sure where he was going. The sound of the elevator echoed hollow down the narrow corridors of St. Mary's Hospital. Ethan stepped out of the metal box with measured steps, a far cry from the authority he usually radiated in the cold marble halls of his own empire. Here, among peeling walls, the scent of cheap antiseptic and staff rushing by with clipboards. And sleepless eyes, he looked out of place. But something was pulling him, and it wasn't just guilt. A young nurse led him toward the pediatric ICU. He's stable now, but it's still delicate, she explained in a soft voice. It was close, very close. Ethan gave a barely perceptible nod. His hands were clasped behind his back, but his fingers moved nervously as he passed through the frosted glass doors. The world seemed to slow down at the center of the tight room. Liam lay in a hospital bed, covered with a thin white sheet. His face was nearly unrecognizable, pale, swollen, with tubes running through his nose and mouth. The oxygen mask hissed in a steady rhythm. Small electrodes stuck to his fragile chest blinked in green and blue, and beside the bed, with her elbows resting on the edge and her hands wrapped around his little ones, was Emma. She wore the same worn-out gray hoodie from the day before. Her ash blonde hair was tied up messily, a few strands falling across her face. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from not sleeping. Ethan stopped at the door. He didn't dare enter. He just stood and watched. Emma didn't even look at him. She didn't move. She simply remained there, still in silent vigil. You promised you were getting better, she murmured to Liam in a voice almost childlike. We were gonna eat pancakes when this was over, remember? With strawberry syrup? From that little bottle we found at the donation market. You said it'd be our happy Saturday. Her voice was calm, but full of restrained pain. Ethan felt a sudden tightening in his chest. Then, the image of the intubated boy began to blur before his eyes. And then came another room, another machine's hum, another small body in a hospital bed, a pink dress, a satin bow in her hair. "Emily?" he whispered, not realizing he'd said it aloud. His younger sister. The memory hit like a blade to raw flesh. She was 9. A systemic infection. And even with all the money, with the best doctors and unlimited access, no one could save her. But what he remembered most wasn't the funeral or the white flowers. It was her eyes. The same eyes Liam had on that hospital bed. Eyes that said, "I'm here. Why won't anyone hear me?" Ethan took a step back. He wanted to breathe, but the air was caught in his throat. He leaned against the hallway wall. His eyes welled up, but he kept them wide open, unblinking. Emma finally turned. Her eyes met his, but there was no surprise, no gratitude. "Only exhaustion. He almost died," she said. Her voice wasn't accusing, just stating a fact. Ethan tried to speak, but his voice faltered. Emma went on, "I'm not here for you. I don't need your pity or your guilt. I just want my brother back." And then she turned back to Liam, resuming her vigil. Ethan stood there for a few more seconds. There were no security guards, no aides, no contracts. Only the sound of the respirator. And the memory of everything he didn't save. When he left the hospital that night, the sky was already dark and car headlights reflected off the damp sidewalk. Ethan walked aimlessly, his tie loosened, the expression of someone who, for the first time, didn't know what to do, but inside him, an old wound had finally opened. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something. 2 days had passed since Liam was intubated. The fever had subsided, the oxygen was gradually reduced, and that morning he finally opened his eyes, weak but alive. Emma hadn't left his side for even a second. She slept sitting, head resting on the mattress, and only ate when a nurse insisted. That afternoon, sunlight filtered through the crooked blinds of the ICU room. Emma gently combed Liam's fine hair with her fingers as he colored, still drowsy, on a piece of paper with broken crayons. "This is our red roof, see?" he said, pointing at the drawing. "I made the little window with curtains like Grandma's house." Emma smiled, her eyes glistening. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. So beautiful." The room door opened slowly. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. She felt the silence change density. Ethan stepped in with steady, but hesitant steps. He wore a lightweight suit without a tie and carried a slim brown leather folder. No security, no assistant. He was alone. "May I talk to you for a minute?" he asked, voice controlled. Emma looked at Liam, then stood and pulled the thin blanket over him. "I'll be right back, okay? Just a second." She followed Ethan into the empty hallway and closed the door behind her. She crossed her arms, saying nothing. Ethan cleared his throat and got straight to the point. "I've taken some steps. St. Mary's doesn't have the resources for long-term treatment. Liam needs full respiratory rehabilitation. I can offer that. My team can transfer him to Whitmore Medical with full access to the best specialists. I'll cover all the costs." Emma kept her face neutral, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "And why? Guilt? No," he replied quickly. "Responsibility." She studied him in silence. Ethan opened the folder and pulled out a document. It was a proposal for an institutional partnership with a children's health NGO. There were logos, timelines, a press agenda. Of course. "We'll do this strategically," he said, opening the sheet and pointing to the items. "The campaign will be framed as a cultural shift at Whitmore Health. We'll document Liam's recovery, tell his story. Show that we're listening to criticism." Emma blinked slowly. Her stomach turned. "You want to film my brother?" "That's not exactly it. We want to show what? That a sick boy can be turned into a marketing display to save a company?" The sentence stopped Ethan mid-speech. For the first time, he lost his train of thought. Emma crossed her arms more tightly. You don't get it. I don't want charity. And even less exposure. My brother is not a media project. He's just a child. A child who almost died because your hospital slammed the door in our face. Ethan tried to regain composure. But if I can offer him dignity, that's all he needs. The silence between them lasted longer than any explanation could. Emma turned to the door. Before going back in, she looked over her shoulder, her eyes steady, her voice calm. You're used to people who accept everything quietly because they have no choice. But I'd rather live with less than sell myself for polished scraps. And she stepped inside, closing the door gently. Ethan stood there, holding the papers that now felt heavier than ever. At that moment, he realized something his fortune had never prepared him for. For the first time, someone had disarmed him. Without shouting, without threats, without bargaining. Simply by standing her ground. Ethan didn't return to Whitmore Health headquarters that afternoon, nor the next morning. Instead, he took his own car, a sleek black sedan that looked oddly out of place in the modest parking lot of St. Mary's, and entered the hospital without notifying anyone. He wore dark jeans, a button-down shirt with sleeves rolled up to the elbows, and a light gray coat. No security detail, no leather folder, just a discreet shopping bag in hand. At reception, the nurse recognized him but didn't dare ask anything. He simply nodded and walked down hallways that were starting to feel familiar. When he reached the pediatric wing, he stopped in front of room 206 and looked through the window. Liam sat upright in bed, no longer intubated, now breathing with the help of a thin nasal cannula. Resting on his knees was a makeshift sketchbook where he carefully drew with colored pencils. Emma sat beside him, softly reading a children's book in her gentle, patient voice. Neither of them saw Ethan. He stepped closer to the door, hesitated, and quietly left the bag on the floor. Inside were a brand new pencil case, a pad of thick drawing paper, imported colored pencils, and a kid-friendly architecture book. In the upper corner of the cover, he had discreetly stuck a folded post-it, written in his firm, steady handwriting, to draw the most beautiful red rooftops in the world. Then he stepped away quietly before Emma could see him. It wasn't for recognition, not for forgiveness. He wasn't even sure what it was. He just knew he had to be there. Even if from afar. In the days that followed, Ethan returned again. Always alone. He brought books, fresh fruit, sometimes a small building toy, but he never entered the room. He simply observed from outside. Sometimes he'd see Emma laughing with Liam. Other times the boy asleep with the pencil still in his hand. And the more Ethan watched, the more something began to shift inside him. A thick layer of cynicism and detachment started to crack. He didn't know what to call it. He only knew it was real. Until one Friday afternoon, as he was quietly leaving the hospital, his phone rang. It was James Rowe, his childhood friend and current CFO of the Whitmore Holding. They had dinner planned with other business leaders at the rooftop restaurant of the Pacific Tower. Ethan had completely forgotten. We've already got champagne on the table. You coming, or did you turn into a volunteer? James joked. Ethan sighed, looked at his car, then up at the gray sky. On my way. Half an hour later, he stepped into the mirror-ceiling restaurant with ambient music playing and waiters dressed like executives. The group greeted him with jokes, laughter, and mocking glances. He showed up, said James, raising his glass. Our philanthropist CEO. Another friend, a lawyer in a royal blue blazer, chimed in sarcastically. So Whitmore, are you falling for the street girl now? Or just doing charity to ease the guilt? Laughter. Someone added, I can draw up the prenup if you want. Never know, right? Maybe she's got a head for PR. Ethan didn't laugh. didn't reply. He sat down slowly, looking around the table. As if seeing those people for the first time, James, sensing the shift, tried to smooth things over. "It's just a joke, man. You've been off the radar. We thought you'd lost it." Ethan held his glass but didn't toast. He stared at his own reflection in the restaurant's glass window, with the city lights twinkling behind it. "Maybe I did," he said softly, without sarcasm. "Or maybe ... I just started to see." He stood slowly, adjusted his coat, and looked. "At James, tell them to split the check, and that I won't be coming back to this table." He left without looking back. There was no anger in his face, just a calm steadiness, like someone finally recognizing the emptiness in their own reflection. On the way back, he stopped in front of the hospital. Stood there for a few minutes, silent outside, as if something still needed to be said. But he didn't go in. He just looked up at the lit window of room 206, and for the first time, he didn't feel above anyone. Just human. The day of Liam's discharge arrived beneath a clear, cold sky. He wore a brand new navy blue coat, a gift from the head nurse, and clutched tightly the sketchbook where he had drawn the hospital Emma, and a tall figure with dark hair beside them, the way he saw Ethan. The boy was stronger now, though still tired. And with every step out of the pediatric wing, he looked down the hallways as if expecting him to appear at any moment. "He's coming to get us, right?" he asked quietly, tugging at the sleeve of Emma's sweatshirt. Emma hesitated. Forced a smile. "Not today, sweetheart. He's probably busy." Liam didn't respond. He just held her hand tighter. Outside, the wind was sharp. Emma pulled up the frayed hood of her sweatshirt and walked slowly down the hospital steps. Going back to the shelter wasn't a step backward, it was survival. But it hurt, especially because, deep down, she had believed something was changing. In the days that followed, Emma's story took a new turn, but not for the right reasons. A gossip site published a sensational headline: "Former nanny of Congressman Brian Douglas resurfaces in medical scandal. Coincidence or calculated move?" The anonymous article hinted at an inappropriate relationship between Emma and the married politician, who had been at the center of a scandal 2 years earlier. They used old photos of her in a nanny uniform entering his mansion with Liam. In her arms, there was no proof of anything, just innuendos. But it was enough. Social media and pundits pounced. Of course, there was something behind it. She used the kid to grab the spotlight. Another one playing the victim to get ahead. Emma read the comments with dry eyes. She knew there was no use explaining. No one wanted the truth, only the next scandal to consume. That same day, she received a brief email from Whitmore Health's PR team. Upon recommendation from our communications team, Mr. Ethan Whitmore will not be making any public statements regarding Ms. Emma. Surname omitted at this time. We ask for your understanding given the current media climate. She read the words with a sinking heart. Ethan didn't call, didn't show up, didn't reply to the quiet, hesitant messages she had dared to send, asking only for a conversation. It was as if he had erased everything. Back at the shelter, Emma tucked Liam into bed under the thin blanket and turned off the light. The boy still held his sketchbook tightly. She sat beside him and ran her fingers through his fine hair. "Mom, is he coming back?" The question came softly, between a yawn and a sliver of hope. Emma took a deep breath. "He only helped us because he felt sorry. And pity. Pity always has an expiration date." Liam said nothing. And for the first time, he didn't draw that day. In the glass-covered penthouse of a building in Nob Hill, Ethan stared at the city from above. His phone buzzed on the table with notifications from reporters, shareholders, and unread messages. But he didn't touch it. The article about Emma was still open on his screen. He had read it several times. He knew it was twisted. He knew she didn't deserve it, and yet he stayed silent. He chose silence. And ironically, that silence screamed louder inside him than any scandal ever could. Night had fallen over San Francisco like a weight. The cold front sweeping down from the north had caught even the most seasoned locals off guard. Temperatures plummeted to dangerous lows, and the city's glowing warning signs flashed with urgency. Avoid going outside. Risk for children and elderly in vulnerable conditions. But Emma had no choice. The shelter they were staying at had limited beds that night and wasn't serving hot meals. A woman who shared their makeshift room mentioned a last-minute cleaning. Shift at a restaurant across town, 3 hours of work, cash in hand. Emma hesitated, but the food was gone. And Liam needed a new inhaler. Promise you'll stay inside? She asked, tucking the thin blanket around Liam's small mattress. The boy nodded, curled up under the flimsy cover. His eyes were red from the icy air that crept through the cracks in the walls. Don't open the door for anyone, okay? I'll be back before you're asleep, and if you get cold, wait near the admin office door. It's warmer in there. Liam clutched the drawing he was finishing and whispered, "You'll be back soon, right?" Emma smiled, even as her heart ached. "Before your next color hits the page." She ran out into the night, backpack on her shoulders, fear clinging to her skin. When she returned 3 hours later, the chaos had already begun. The shelter's gate was ajar. The hallway was empty. The night staffer lay on a couch with headphones in. Emma rushed to their room and froze. "Liam?" She called. "Liam, it's me. I'm back." Silence. She bolted to the admin office. Nothing. No sign of him. He was nowhere to be found. Emma raced down the back stairs, out into the deserted streets, the freezing wind slicing her face like knives. She started to scream. Liam, please answer me." Cars sped past, no one stopped. The city, modern, glowing, indifferent, carried on as a woman ran from block to block, showing strangers a crumpled drawing of a red-roofed house. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan was in a boardroom meeting with executives from a medical tech company when his phone buzzed. A headline flashed on the screen. 5-year-old boy disappears after being left in shelter during cold wave. Volunteers begin search. Hashtag find Liam trending. He froze. Didn't excuse himself. Didn't explain. Just stood up, grabbed his coat, and left. Emma was still running through wet sidewalks when a black SUV screeched to a halt beside her. The door flew open. Ethan stepped out, pale, wide-eyed. "Tell me he's already been found," was all he could manage. Emma shook her head, breathless. "He's gone. I only left for a few hours. He must have gone looking for me." Ethan didn't wait. He pulled out his phone and started organizing search teams using ride apps. Called the police, tapped into contacts he hadn't used in years. He and Emma split up, searching alleys, parks, stations, back streets. Until, hours later, Emma turned a narrow corner and stopped. "Liam?" she whispered. There he was, huddled between frozen trash bags and damp brick walls, sitting, shivering. When he saw her, but silent. Emma rushed to him, pulled him into her arms. "Oh God, baby, you're here, you're here." He was weak, his skin icy, his cheeks hard as stone. But he was breathing. And in his tiny hands, folded carefully against his chest, was a piece of paper. Emma unfolded it slowly. It was a drawing, a house with a red roof. At the door, 2 figures. Her and Ethan holding hands. Ethan arrived seconds later. He froze. At the sight, breath heaving, and dropped to his knees. Emma looked at him silently. There was pain in her eyes and relief. And something else, something broken. Something that couldn't be ignored anymore. Liam opened his eyes slowly and murmured, barely audible. I just wanted our home. The room at St. Mary's was small and simple, but that morning it held something more than just a patient. A portable heater hummed softly beside the bed. Golden sunlight streamed through the narrow window, spreading across the whitened, slightly peeling walls. Liam was asleep, still fragile, but peaceful. His small chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm, as if the world had slowed down just so. He could simply be. On the bedside table, 3 colored pencils, red, green, and brown, were scattered. His latest drawing lay at the center, a house with crooked lines but filled with meaning. A bold red roof, a large door, and 3 figures. Standing hand in hand out front. Emma watched it with misty eyes, though she didn't cry. She had cried enough. Now there was something new in her expression, something between exhaustion and hope. Her fingers moved gently across Liam's forehead, as if imprinting the moment onto her soul. The door opened slowly, without urgency. Ethan entered, no suit, no blazer, just a light blue cotton shirt with sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He carried nothing. No flowers, no sketchbooks, no explanations. He brought only himself. No titles, no defenses. Emma turned at the sound of the door. Her gaze for a moment was unreadable, not cold, not open. Just quiet. Ethan closed the door behind him and stepped forward. I waited for the right time to come back, he said, softly. But maybe that time never comes. So I came anyway. Emma didn't reply. She simply stepped aside from the bed so he could see Liam better. Ethan moved closer, eyes fixed on the boy. He watched his calm breathing, the small fingers stained faintly with pencil. Then his gaze dropped to the drawing. A long breath escaped him. He's still drawing the same house, Emma nodded. With the same red roof. Even when he doesn't have a place to sleep, he still dreams of that one. A pause settled between them. Time seemed suspended. Ethan reached into his shirt pocket and pulled something out. A key, small, plain, silver, unadorned. He held it out to her, palm open, saying nothing at first. Emma furrowed her brow. Is that a house? He said finally. Not a mansion, not a gift. A small 2-story place in a residential neighborhood near Glen Canyon Park. Red roof, wooden doors. 2 windows in front, a garden in the back. And quiet. Emma hesitated. You bought it? I did, he said calmly, but not to give away and not to make amends. I bought it because I need to start over too. Somewhere money doesn't enter the room before I do. Where I'm. Not the name on a building, where I can just be someone. She stared at him, unblinking. I grew up learning everything had a trade value, that you only give if you're getting something back. But you showed me there's another kind of value, that it's possible to do something for someone without control, without needing applause. He stepped a little closer. This key is for me too, because I want to live somewhere love isn't a debt, where we don't have to ask permission to exist. Emma took the key. Her fingers brushed his for a moment. Are you sure about this? For the first time, he said, looking straight into her eyes, I want to do something without proving anything to anyone. Just for me and for you, for him. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Emma held the key to her chest, not like a gift, but like a choice. There were no tears in her eyes. There was something rarer. Peace. Liam stirred, opened his eyes slowly and smiled when he saw them there. The red roof, he murmured sleepily. He found it. Emma looked at Ethan, and for the first time, smiled with truth. Ethan stepped closer to the bed, knelt beside it, and gently touched the drawing. Now all that's left is for us to live inside it, he said. Spring arrived in San Francisco. Without fanfare. It wasn't marked by dramatic shifts in the sky or blazing heat. It crept in through small details, branches timidly blooming on quiet residential streets, the smell of bread baking in neighborhood kitchens, the muffled sounds of children playing after school. And on that Saturday morning, it settled delicately into a modest corner house, white facade, simple garden, and a red roof that now had a name, a scent and a meaning. It was early, and the home still held the cozy hush of dawn. In the kitchen, Emma sat at the table with her hair damp from the shower, wearing the pale blue uniform of her nursing assistant course. She was focused on a thick textbook, eye-scanning diagrams and explanations of the respiratory system. Beside her, a white mug steamed gently, bearing the phrase, "Love begins with care." On the floor, Liam was drawing on the rug, his body steadier now, cheeks rosy, eyes alert. He wore a yellow sweatshirt stained with paint, his pencil case open beside him, surrounded by scattered crayons, markers, and folded scraps of paper. Every one of his drawings had a recurring element, a house with open windows and smiling people at the door. In most, 3 figures stood out, a light-haired woman, a man in a blue shirt, and a boy with wide eyes holding a pencil. "Look at this one," he said, holding up a paper. "I drew us at the playground. Remember when Ethan almost fell off?" "The slide?" Emma chuckled softly, eyes still on the page. "Of course I remember. And he said it was on purpose, just to make you laugh." "But he laughed before I did," Liam replied, grinning proudly. The sound of footsteps in the hallway announced Ethan's arrival. He appeared with an improvised breakfast tray, 2 slices of toast, scrambled eggs, and carefully cut fruit. He wore a gray t-shirt and dark jeans, his hair tousled, giving him a younger, lighter air. His gray-green eyes were calm, but alert. "Breakfast time," he said, setting the tray down. "For the future nurse and the best artist in school." Emma looked up and smiled. There was no grandeur in his gesture, no need to impress. Just the quiet presence of someone who had chosen to stay. Liam jumped up and hugged Ethan's legs tightly. "You're taking me to the school exhibit today, right?" "Of course I am," Ethan said, crouching to his level. "I promised I'd go to everyone. I'm not breaking that." Liam went back to his drawing, and Emma watched Ethan in silence for a few seconds. There was something different about him, not just in his simple clothes, but in the way he breathed in that space. He was no longer a man from another world trying to fit into hers. He was someone who had left his own world behind to build a new one, without guarantees. She stepped closer, gently rested her hand on his shoulder, and whispered, "You seem at peace." Ethan turned. "Maybe I am. How's Whitmore Health?" "Smaller. More human, and with fewer applause. And more truth?" He nodded. "I've been funding mobile clinics in low-income neighborhoods. No press, no plaques with my name, just service." Emma looked at him closely, and for the first time in a long time, she felt something settle inside her. It wasn't impulsive passion. It was love, built with silence, with stumbles, with dignity, and with choice. That afternoon, they went to Liam's school. The auditorium buzzed with parents, teachers, and children dashing between posters. At the center of the art exhibit stood a mural titled "My Dreams." Liam's drawing was in the spotlight, a house with a red roof surrounded by floating hearts like balloons. Teacher approached Emma and Ethan. "Your son said that's his home, the one he waited for a long time." Emma smiled, her eyes misty. He wasn't lying. On the walk back home, with the sky bathed in golden sunset, the 3 of them walked side by side, Liam between them, holding both their hands. None of them spoke. They didn't need to. When they reached the doorstep, Ethan paused and looked at the house. The red roof glowed beneath the fading sun. He breathed deeply, then turned to Emma and said, in a low, steady voice, It took me a long time to understand this, but sometimes what most needs saving is our own heart. Emma squeezed his hand, and the heart doesn't save itself. It needs to find a home in someone else's. They stepped inside, and the door closed softly behind them. That night, there were no grand declarations, just the smell of homemade soup, quiet laughter, colored pencils on the floor, and a rare serenity, the kind that only comes when we stop running from our own truth. Because in that simple house, with the red roof, they didn't find luxury, status, or fame. They found something infinitely more valuable, a home. Now tell me, what did you think of this story? On a scale from 0 to 10, how much did it move you? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave your comment down below. If this story touched you, give it a like, share it with someone who needs this message, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next ones. And before you go, I've selected one more emotional story that's sure to touch your heart even deeper. Just click on the screen and keep journeying with us.